What's going on, my people? Long time no speak. I'm here again with Professor Asher. Professor Asher, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Yeah, it's been a long time since we did something like that.
Yes, yes, yes. Of course, we're going to be talking about biblical Hebrew. Of course, Asher's going to be heading it. You don't want your information from me unless we're talking about really basic stuff. This live stream, to my understanding, Asher was just telling me about it. It is a review from the past 3 or 4 classes we've done and an open floor for questions. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So the best case scenario is that all of you ask questions. All right. So this live stream is intended to be for all the questions you have ever wanted to ask about biblical Hebrew, and for those of you who I don't know where you're watching from, but please be on YouTube Live so that Ryan can pick up your questions and put them on the screen so that we can see them together. All right. So, what I'm thinking about doing is to review the first 4 lessons that we've gone through already. And in preparation for lesson 5, which will happen in say 2 weeks time, we will cover definiteness. All right, but that lesson might not make sense to you if you did not look at the other lessons already. So what's more important today is what people want to know. I think is more important, because otherwise I'm going to be rambling about something. So pick any question out of thin air. All right, there's no context. Anything you have ever wanted to know about biblical Hebrew, and just let me know. All right, and meanwhile I will go into a review mode if that's okay.
Wait. I got a question.
Sure,
I'm hoping that applies to me too. I can ask questions.
sure.
Okay.
Of course you can. Yeah.
Okay. So I noticed in let me find it. Here it is. Okay, let me share my screen. Share screen. Bear with me 1 second. Here we are. So I'll be looking
Yeah.
at um, verse 3. And I was reading this. Ki miza o natan la molech. And here it says, um, in essence, because he had given of his seed unto Molech. Okay. My question to you, Professor Asher. Oh, let me take this comment up. I'm sorry. So, from my understanding, from what I've learned so far, you have the Lamet, okay, which is 2 or 4 belonging to. Um, Usually, the Lamet has a Shva underneath it. This has a Patah, and I'm assuming it has a Patah because there's an apocryphating Hey, right? So the Hey apocryphated. So this is actually to the Molech. What do you know about the Molech, and why don't they? Why do you think they don't translate it unto the Molech when in the Hebrew it says to the Molech?
Okay. So the reason is that sometimes what we think are names might not actually be names. All right. We assume that Molech is a name because that is how it appears in our English translations, but sometimes like false gods like Baal is not a name. Baal is actually the normal word for master or husband, right? And of course, somebody out there is going to name their false god Baal, right? Master. And so we do find in the Hebrew text places where the Israelites in Judges would worship the Baalim, and you will see Hab Baalim, right? The I think in English translation it's the Baals or something, you know. But that's, I think, what is happening here. I don't think Molech is so much a name as a kind of false god. As you know, Molech is a person who reigns, right? A king. All right, it
Mm-hmm.
could mean that. So it's not at all surprising that here, this word molech comes with a definite article, and we're supposed to talk about definite articles next week.
Okay.
Other examples of this is the city of Ai, okay, which Joshua first conquered in the land of Canaan, right? In English, it's like Ai. The city's name is spelled as Ai, but in Hebrew, it's Ha'ai. That's a definite article, the Ai, the city of the Ai. And what does that mean? You know, it's just a matter of Hebrew that sometimes names have the definite article. And so that's what I think is happening here.
Okay. I got a question coming up for you. There it is. Let me know if you can't read it.
Let's see. Please talk about paranomasia and metathesis. I probably give some examples because otherwise I don't really know what you are referring to. Any specific example you're talking about? Yeah. So thanks for that question. I'll wait. I'll wait for the. I'll wait for the. Yeah, specific molech. Yeah, you can say that the specific molech, right? Like again, in the book of Joshua, Joshua conquers a city called Ha'ai, right? So there's a definite article to the name of that city. It's not surprising. Another example would be, no, Bethlehem is not really, even though they're, okay, never mind. Yeah, okay, anyway, any other questions? If not, I'll just move into a,
No.
I'll wait for the example, yeah.
Yeah, so we're waiting on Ronen Torah for an example of those $3 words I don't know how to pronounce.
Nomasia and metathesis. Okay. If
Real quick,
nothing,
I
let's see.
apologize.
Numerology and the meaning attributed to each Hebrew letter. Aha. Is it rabbinic tradition or does it predate that? As far as I know, it doesn't it doesn't occur in the early rabbinic tradition. So even in early rabbinic texts, you don't see rabbis thinking that Hebrew letters have meaning. Okay, that is an idea that comes a bit much later, right? In later rabbinic texts, you will see mentions about the Hebrew letter has a meaning, all right, but not in earlier Hebrew texts. And before Yeshua's birth, you don't find anyone thinking that Hebrew letters have meaning. Okay, so that is a very relatively recent idea that Hebrew letters have meaning. And actually, I have a slide now. Why do people think that, right? So let me just share my screen now. We are also fumbling. Hey, I think you can share my stop screen. There we go. Put that on. Yes. So there is this idea that Hebrew letters have meanings, and therefore therefore Hebrew words are spelt the way they are because of the meaning of their letters. However, this does not make sense because in every language, including Hebrew, words first existed in spoken form before they were written in letters in written form. Does that make sense, right? So long before any Hebrew letters were used by humans, right? They were speaking it first, right? Letters were only invented or devised because you wanted to take your spoken language and write it down in written form, right? So why are Hebrew letters called Aleph, Bet, Gimel? You know, these names, the names of the Hebrew letters have meaning, all right? But the Hebrew letters themselves do not have meaning. So what happened was, and I put it simplistically here, by the way, this is called the Rebus principle, all right? You can look it up. It's about how Hebrew letters and pretty much all other alphabets were devised, okay? So first of all, there was a language that existed in spoken form, right? And now they wanted to create letters to represent the language in written form. So how do they go about devising each letter? And what they do, this is called the rebus principle, is that first they say, okay, there is a word in our language, bet, right, that begins with the b sound. And so what we will do is we will take the house symbol, right, from Egypt, because Egypt was the superpower during that time. So we take the Egyptian symbol for a house, okay, then we will use that to represent the b sound, because in our language, the word for house, bet, begins with a b sound, all right? And then accordingly, we will call this letter bit, all right? So that is how it came to be, all right? That Hebrew letters were used solely for the purpose of their sound, and their names just derived from the symbol that was used, okay? So if we take, for example, the Hebrew word for father, Av, right? It is spelled Aleph Bet. Now, why is it spelled Aleph Bet? Well, you can come up with some funny theory that, Aleph is the ox, it represents power. Oh, Bet is the house. The father is the power of the house. You know, you can come up with some theory like that, you know. It's very arbitrary, right? But in reality, the reason why it's spelled Aleph Bet is because long before there were any Hebrew letters, people were saying Av, right? They were saying the word for father as Av. And so when it came time to write it down, obviously they will choose the letters which represent those sounds. Okay? Hope that answers that question. Any more questions in the chat? Ryan, you're muted. So you're talking pan, okay?
And then he
pan-
also,
yeah.
I'm sorry, Professor. He also put this as well.
Yeah, so yeah, he's talking about puns. Yeah, puns go back, way back, even into Genesis chapter 1, right? We call the first human Adam. Let's see. My screen isn't moving. Oh, there's a reason for that. Yes, I should stop. Let's see, I should share this one. Okay, so let me put up, put that up for me, please. Okay, Genesis chapter 1. So this is pun, right? You're talking about puns. So in the creation of humankind, okay, we call the first human Adam. And the reason for that actually is because of what the word for human is, right? So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, my browser is a bit slow, bear with it. All right. This is how God talked about the intention to create humanity. Oh no, I don't know what's happening with my browser. Vayomer Elohim na'ase Adam besalmenu kidmutenu. Right. So God said, "Let us make." English translation says, "Let us make man in our image," but in Hebrew, it's "Let us make Adam." Okay, and so Adam then becomes the word for humanity. All right. And for the next few times, all right, even though our English translation says something like Adam, all right, actually the word there is Adam, meaning humanity. All right, so perhaps you could call that a pun. Okay. The next one would be, there's the naming of Eve, but let's go to the naming of Cain, right? So, Veha Adam Yada et Hava Ishto Vatahar Vateled et Qayin, right? So, and the human knew his wife, Eve, and she conceived and she bore Cain, or in Hebrew, Cain, right? And she's Vatomer, and she said, Qaniti ish et Yehovah. Okay, I acquired a man, Yehovah. There's a whole other thing to talk about that. But the reason why she named her son Cain is because Qaniti, I acquired. So you can hear the resemblances there, right? So this is all these things are, you can hear the resemblance, and you can see the resemblance in the written text, right? So if you ask whether it is written or verbal, I say both, because you can hear it and you can see it. Qayin, qaniti, right? Yeah, hope that answers that question. Any more in the chat?
Sorry, I keep muting myself. We got this comment.
The names. Okay, possible pronunciations. Okay, so let me begin with the one that we don't know, which is the name of the true God. His name is spelled Yod He Vav He, 4 letters, and I pronounce it as Yehovah. Okay, I pronounce the Vav as V, but I know that in ancient times it would have been pronounced as Wa. Okay, perhaps Yehovah. All right. Yahweh is also another reasonable guess. We're all guessing at this point, right? Because there is no definitive proof of it. What I do is I look at the vowelization of the Masoretic text, and I say, yeah, that looks reasonable, right? That looks like a name. And there are theories that, actually it's vowelized like that so that you pronounce it as Adonai. Personally, I don't buy that. So I think that Yehovah is most probably the way to pronounce his name, all right? But Yahweh is also another plausible alternative, okay? So those are the 2 plausible alternatives. As for the name of the Messiah, his name is actually the same as the character Joshua, right? Joshua's name is spelt, well, many names are spelt in different ways in the Hebrew text, okay? So it's like Sean, I know in English, if you are an Sean, Sean, you always spell your name like that, right? But in Hebrew, if your name is Sean, sometimes it is spelled Sean, and sometimes it is spelled Shawn. Okay, it's a bit difficult for us to understand because we always spell our names exactly the same, right? But back during Hebrew scribal culture, names are spelled differently throughout, even in the same verse. Let me show that. Okay, so let's take a look at the book of Judges, chapter 2, verse 7. I need to switch my screen again. Yeah, put that on for me. Okay, so in Judges chapter 2, verse 7, we have 2 occurrences of the name Joshua. In the first occurrence, in the Hebrew text, the name is spelled Yod He Vav Shin Ayin. Okay? However, the second time that Joshua's name appears in this same verse, it is spelled Yod He Vav Shin Vav Ayin. There is a second Vav in between the Shin and the Ayin. All right? So, there are people who say that the Messiah's name must be pronounced Yahusha. Okay? And others will say Yahshua. Dear friends, Hebrew does not work like that. Okay? Now, the second occurrence here is how Joshua's name is spelt in the fullest possible form. Okay? Notice they are both the same names, just spelled differently. And this second occurrence here is the way that it is spelled most fully. So, however you want to pronounce Joshua's name, and if you think that this is the way to pronounce the Messiah's name, then your pronunciation of this name must have two O or U sounds. Okay? In other words, Yahusha is an impossible pronunciation because it only contains one U sound. My question to you is, what happened to the second Vav over here? You must account for this second Vav in your pronunciation. Okay? And Yahusha only accounts for the first Vav, Yahusha. But the Sha does not account for the second Vav here. Okay? Likewise, Yahshua accounts for the second Vav, right? Yahshua, that's the second Vav. But it does not account for the first Vav. Where is your first Vav? I must hear another U or O sound. Okay? So there must be two of those U or O sounds. And that is why, most reasonably, Joshua's name is pronounced Yehoshua. Notice there are two O or U sounds. Yehoshua. Okay? So Yahusha and Yahshua, with all respect to you, those are not possible pronunciations of Joshua's name. Ciara, I hope that answered the question. If not, please ask it again. Okay, I'll be happy to address it. Oh wait, before that, I haven't addressed Yeshua. Okay, because that's how I pronounce the Messiah's name. Now, again, we must understand, and this is very difficult for us to understand because we say things like, oh, names cannot be translated. Yes, they can. You know, the president of Ukraine is, what's his name? Zelensky, right? Volodymyr Zelensky. That is his name in Ukrainian because he is Ukrainian, right? However, do you know what they call Volodymyr Zelensky in Russia? They call him Vladimir Zelensky. Vladimir. So the Ukrainian president's name in Ukraine is pronounced Volodymyr Zelensky. But by Russians, his name is pronounced Vladimir Zelensky. So names are changed from language to language. Likewise, the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. Okay? That's what his name is in Russian. But when Ukrainians pronounce his name, they use the Ukrainian equivalent, Volodymyr Putin. Names change across languages. All right? Next one, Donald Trump. You call him Donald Trump in English. What do you think the Chinese call him? Dear friends, they don't call him Donald Trump. Okay, in China, they call him Tena de. I forgot the whole thing. All right, but it's like Tena de. That's how his name is, Terampu. Tena de Telangpu. Right? So names do change across languages. Don't tell me this. Names do not change. You know, that's spoken by an English-centric American who thinks that everyone is an American, okay? That's not true. So, Joshua's name is Yehoshua, all right? But and I have to change my screen again. Oh, I don't have to. Okay, let's take a look at how Joshua's name is spelled in the book of Nehemiah. Oh no, I do have to change that. Let's see. Oh, I see why I'm sharing a tab instead of a window. Okay.
Real quick, shalom, Ron. What's going on?
Okay, it's lagging again. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay. So, in the book of Joshua and the book of Judges, Joshua's name is written as Yehoshua, right? Bin Nun. All right. However, in the book of Nehemiah, it is written Yeshua bin Nun. And in English translations, it says Joshua, son of Nun. It's the same person. But look, the name has changed somewhat. Same person, same name, different form of the same name. Okay? So don't tell me this nonsense about names can't change. Names are always the same throughout time in every language. That is not true. Look at how Nehemiah writes Yehoshua's name. He wrote it as Yeshua bin Nun. It's in the scriptures, right? But people don't know that because they don't know Hebrew, and then they pretend to know Hebrew, and they make all these arrogant claims about Hebrew. Now, I don't mind if you call him Yahusha or Yahshua, right? I don't mind that at all. I won't fight you. But please do not fight others who have a different opinion and pronounce his name differently. That's my point. All right?
Amen.
Okay. Has a theory that Hebrew was the original language before Babel. Okay, so biblical Hebrew. Okay, so let's go to my slides now. In my first lesson, I talk about the history of the Hebrew language. All right, and as you can see, there are different stages of Hebrew. All right, Hebrew did not always remain the same. All right, the Hebrew that Moses spoke is different from the Hebrew that David spoke, and the Hebrew that David spoke is different from the Hebrew that the rabbis wrote in. And the Hebrew that the rabbis wrote in is different from the modern Israeli Hebrew that is spoken in Israel today. All right, so what's the relevance to that? Well, I don't think I will say that biblical Hebrew is the same language, is the original language before Babel. But I will go so far as to say this, that the language, the Adamic language, the language that Adam spoke, resembles Hebrew quite closely, even if it is not exactly the same. And the reason is that, as I have shown just now, right, the name Adam, right, is for humanity, and that only makes sense in Hebrew. Likewise, when Adam named his wife Eve, Havva, he named it because she is the mother of all Hai, of all living things, right? That pun only makes sense in Hebrew. Likewise, when Eve named her son Qayin, it was because she had acquired a man, Qaniti. That only makes sense in Hebrew. So even if, and I don't think that biblical Hebrew is the Adamic language, I would nonetheless say that the original language of Adam before Babel is pretty close to biblical Hebrew or archaic Hebrew. So if I were to put the Adamic language, I would put it like right before archaic Hebrew. All right? Hope that answers the question.
That's good.
Yeah, so in Genesis chapter 49, Shur, and then in Deuteronomy, Shor. Yeah, I would think that there is a play on words there, or even a different term for the same thing. Okay, so remember, Hebrew does evolve, and the word that is used will also evolve. All right. Let me show you one thing. Let's just take off that comment. Let us talk about something. Oh, how much time do we have left? Oh, it's already half an hour. All right. So again, modern Israeli Hebrew is very different from the Hebrew that we find in Scripture. Okay. So let me show you some examples. I'll not come here. Oh, okay, fine. Let's do this. So a good example will be in Genesis chapter 2, verse 6, where it says that Ve'ed ya'ale min ha'ares ve'hishqa et kol bnei ha'adama. Right? So if you look at the word ya'ale that I've highlighted there, a modern Hebrew reader will equate the yiktol tense with the future tense. And if he has not learned biblical Hebrew, then he would think that this is a future tense and the mist will go up. Okay. However, if you learn biblical Hebrew, you will learn that in biblical Hebrew, there is no past, present, future tense. The yiktol form here is more of an imperfective aspect. A mist used to go up. Okay. And this is important because I once heard a non-Christian Jewish rabbi, right, a Jewish rabbi, who was arguing, it was Isaiah chapter 9. He was arguing that this verse is not messianic. It cannot be talking about the future Messiah because it is in the past tense. It's not in the future tense. Therefore, this is not a messianic prophecy. This is said by a Jewish rabbi, and I put my face palm like, because this Jewish rabbi, I don't know whether it was accidental or intentional, but this Jewish rabbi did not know or intentionally obscured the reality that there is no such thing as past tense or future tense in Hebrew, in biblical Hebrew, right? So he was taking a modern Hebrew concept and saying this biblical passage cannot be a messianic prophecy because it is in the past tense. All right? That's not how biblical Hebrew works. Okay? Let's take a look at more examples. How do you say I don't know in Hebrew?
Ani lo yodea.
Yeah, that's what you say. Ani lo yodea, like a good modern Hebrew. But no one in scripture talks like that. No one. So in Genesis chapter 4, after Cain killed Abel, and God said to Cain, Cain, where is your brother? Cain did not say Ani lo yodea like a modern Israeli. No, he said Lo yada'ati. I do not know. Lo yada'ati. Right? Notice the difference. All right? Likewise, how do you call your father and your mother in Hebrew? Many people say Abba, Imma.
Avi.
Right? But dear friends, Abba and Imma, it's not even Hebrew. It was Aramaic and it was borrowed, loan words into Hebrew, right? So that's a relatively modern phenomenon. All right? Abba and Imma. How do we know how people called their parents in biblical Hebrew? Well, we don't have to guess. We don't have to guess, right? In Isaiah chapter 8, verse 3, we find the terms used. Avi, Immi, right? That's in Isaiah chapter 8, verse 3. We even find examples of that. So in Genesis chapter 22, verse 7, when Isaac was carrying the wood that Abraham would sacrifice him on, right? Isaac then turned to his father and addressed his father. How does he address his father? Dear friends, Isaac did not say Abba like a good modern Israeli, okay? No, he said Avi, my father. Likewise, in 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 20, when Solomon addressed his mother, he did not say Imma like a good modern Israeli. No, he said Immi. All right? So there is a difference. even regarding the words that we choose and how we choose to say it. So with all respect to Miss Rachel, who teach us, Abba and Imma, that's correct for modern Hebrew. However, we have to realize that no Israelite during biblical times would have said Abba and Imma, okay? The evidence points us to Avi and Immi. All right, any questions? Any more questions?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Genesis 49, do you know offhand if that's archaic?
I don't know it offhand. We can take a look at it together. What do you have in mind?
Well, it was in reference to this. I didn't know. I mean, it fits in line with what you were just discussing in regards to the development of the Hebrew language. And I didn't know if that was a possibility of Genesis. I know Genesis 49 is the blessing, right? And it's really heavily like poetic.
Yeah.
And I wasn't
Naturally,
sure
yeah.
if it was, and I wasn't sure if it was archaic.
Yeah, it's looking at it, it's not really archaic. No, not
Okay.
really. Yeah.
Okay.
Archaic
so
would be in Exodus 15, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the next question here.
Yeah, I got a lot of flack because the rabbis made up some bogus reason on why they call him Yeshu. All right, so already during the time of Yeshua, some people were already pronouncing that name as Yeshu. All right, so it's not just our Messiah that was called Yeshu. Anyone with that name would be called Yeshu. All right, so it's only later on that the rabbis exclusively, almost, refer to our Messiah as Yeshu, and then they tacked on this significance about may his name and memory be blotted out, right? So it is a bogus reason. That's not the reason, okay? It was a very common phenomenon during the time of our Messiah that Yeshua was also called Yeshu, okay? So hope that answers that question.
Okay, you made it to the bottom of the questions. Again, if you just tuned in, this is open floor for questions. And we got this one.
Oh, there we go. How do we distinguish between Aramaic and Hebrew? Yeah, we distinguish it by looking at, because you know Aramaic. All right, so yes, in Psalm 2:12, that's Aramaic, right? Bar. Let's just go there. So it says Nashaqu var. And the only reason why we know this is Aramaic is because we know Aramaic. We know that in Aramaic, the word for sun is bar. That's why we know that this is Aramaic. All right. And you will find this throughout scripture, right? The Israelites will write, and sometimes they will borrow loan words from Aramaic into Hebrew. This is very common. Even in English, we have many words that we borrow from other languages, right? So it's not surprising. Okay, loan words are a common phenomenon. Okay, any more questions?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, please keep the questions coming so that I can answer. If I have said anything that was difficult to catch, you did not understand, please put it in again. All right, then I will know that I wasn't clear and I can address that. Okay. So yes, the difference between modern and biblical Hebrew. Let's take a look at consonants. Yeah, we covered that. Vowels. Okay. Let me fill in some time by introducing the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And honestly, you can just, plenty of videos out there on how to pronounce. All right. So I will just tell you certain letters where I differ from the majority. So look at the 8th letter here. This, I pronounce it as hit, the ha sound, okay? Ha. Modern Israelis will pronounce it as khit, kh. So do that if you want, okay? But so if I pronounce it as ha, please understand why, okay? But you are free to pronounce khit. That's not wrong, right? Likewise, this letter over here, is my mouse showing? Oh, my mouse is not showing.
Yeah, I
How
can't
do I?
see.
Can't see it, huh? Let's turn on the laser pointer. There we go.
Nice.
Okay. This letter over here is ayin, right? So the Messiah's name, I'm sorry, are the fighter jets causing problems?
No,
Go
it's
on.
okay now.
Okay. Now, our Messiah's name is not Yeshua, okay? It's Yeshua, right? But obviously you don't have to do that, right? Yeshua is fine. I'm talking about people who insist that you must pronounce the Messiah's name accurately in order to be saved, okay? If that is the case, I'll see you in hell, because most of the people saying this are English speakers who can't pronounce the letter ayin, right? So when they say Yahusha, it's wrong anyway because you are not pronouncing the letter ayin correctly. Okay, so again, but modern Israelis and most people just say ayin, and that's fine. Okay. Likewise, this letter over here, I pronounce it as sade. Okay. Modern Israelis pronounce it as sade. A TS sound, right? That's fine, but I pronounce it as sade because it's the ancient pronunciation, right? Okay, any questions? Did that generate any questions? There we go. Would you say Yeshua can be called Yehoshua? Sure. It's different forms of the same name. Okay, it just so happens that in later times, during the times of Nehemiah and all that, Yehoshua was more frequently called Yeshua. Okay, now there is even a high priest called Yeshua in some books, but in some other books, that same high priest is called Yehoshua. All right, really different forms of the same name, right? Call him whichever you would prefer, but neither is wrong, right? Don't judge one another for using a different form. Psalm 81, Kiseh. Let's take a look at that. Is that the full question, or did it cut off?
That's the full. Oh, here we go. Hold on.
Full moon or covered. So I think you are talking about. I see. Because in Hebrew it appears as verse 4. So the Hebrew verse numbering is actually sometimes different from the verse numberings we have in English, right? So in the Hebrew it's verse 4. It says Tiqa'u bahodesh shofar bakaseh leyom hagenu. Right. So is it a full moon or a covered moon? The only way we can know is to take a look at the lexicon, right? I understand that there is a verb, kisa, which means to cover, right? However, when we look at I'm getting cut off, aren't I? My connection is not that good.
Yeah, it's just lagging a little bit. It only did it a few times, but you're coming through pretty good.
Right. So the word itself is kese, right? And it means full moon. And yeah, it's spelled a little bit differently, but it means full moon. Okay. So I don't know what covered moon is, like an eclipse. But eclipses don't happen every month. So yeah. Is it Aramaic slang for appointed time? Not that I know of. Yeah. LXX, let me take a quick look at the Septuagint. The Targums, by the way, especially if we are talking about Psalms, the Targums are much later. All right, so hundreds of years after the time of our Messiah. Okay, let's see. Simon. It says new moon. So the Neomenia. So in the LXX, it's not appointed time; it's new moon. So it's a different understanding, right? So the LXX prefers to interprets that word as new moon, whereas in Hebrew the term most likely means a full moon. Okay.
Wow, but that's a big difference. You got the LXX saying a new moon,
Yeah.
and the Hebrew saying a full moon. That's
Yeah. It happens.
okay.
Remember, the LXX are not divinely inspired translators. You know, they have their opinions too. So, yeah.
Right. We got Ron and Torah. The reason I asked is because some people celebrate the beginning of the month at conjunction or full moon rather than silver because of that verse.
Yeah. Okay. But this crosses the line into application and theology, so I won't address that. I would prefer to focus on what the Hebrew text says, and I will leave us to grapple with how we apply that. Yeah.
I would say that we should observe Torah, because theology has its place outside of Torah. Torah is pretty straightforward, although there be theological concepts. I definitely wouldn't take any type of phrases or statements like this from Psalms and try to apply it as if it's a type of instruction.
I will leave the theology and application to you, Ryan. I'll just take the Hebrew and the technical details and the history. All right. Let's do that. Yeah.
Sir. Okay, that was I think that was it for the questions.
That was it for the questions. Okay, let's see. Do we have any? Oh, we have 15 minutes left. Let's try to do something. Let's see. What else can we talk about? Okay, let's continue with vowels. Okay, so ignore the words out there. Okay, so just to read Hebrew, what you do is you start from the right, right? Hebrew reads from right to left, right? So you start from the right, you read the consonant. Oh, wait, let me bring up the laser pointer again. Right, so you read the consonant. In this case, the consonant is Aleph, and Aleph doesn't make a sound, right? You read the consonant, and then you read the vowel that is associated with the consonant. Okay? And then you end it off with the next the next consonants. Here it's the letter bet, so it makes a b sound. But here, because it doesn't have a dot inside, it makes a v sound. All right, so av, that's the word for father. Av. Okay. So you have now learned 2 consonants and 1 vowel. All right. The Aleph, this is how it looks like. It does not make any sound. This is the letter Bet, and it makes the B sound, but without the dot, it's V. All right. And this is an A vowel. All right. So Av. Okay. We have a question. What is the oldest Hebrew letter? Okay. The oldest form of Hebrew letters, dear friends, is the same letters, just written differently. Think of it as different fonts, right? I can use a Times New Roman font. I can use a Calibri font, but they are not different letters. They are the same letters, just in different fonts. All right, so let's go to consonants. The oldest form of Hebrew letters is looks like that. Right, so this we call this the Proto-Sinaitic script. Proto-Sinaitic, and notice that they are pictures, right? But they are used for their phonetic or sound value, right? Later on, we have the Phoenician script. And it's called the Phoenician script because the Israelites essentially borrowed this script from the Phoenicians or the Canaanites. All right? Remember, the Israelites were away from the promised land for a very long time. All right? Before the Israelites entered the promised land was the land of Canaan, the Canaanites. And they were writing like this. So when the Israelites entered the promised land, they just took the script to write their language. All right? This is the Phoenician script. Okay? And then later on, even during the time of our Messiah, Yeshua, the Jews used the Assyrian script to write in Hebrew. Okay? So these are all the same letters, just in different fonts, if you will. Right? Hope that answers the question. Do you have any more?
We have one from Mr. Rob. He said you changed we did change. We went to a different question. Then he says, I don't want to interrupt, but the New Testament was written in Greek and his name was, and Professor Asher, since you know Greek, I'll let you read that.
Yeah. Jesus, Ron, you are missing the final sigma. Yeah, Jesus. And the reason why it is written as Jesus, and by the way, our Messiah is not the first person who is called Jesus, all right? Remember, the Septuagint, Jews were already using Greek versions of their scriptures long before our Messiah was born, all right? And so we actually have a manuscript. I don't have it now. I can show it maybe next time. We have a manuscript of the book of Deuteronomy where Joshua's name is written in Greek as Jesus. So don't come telling me saying that, oh, Jesus, Jesus means Hail Zeus, right? First of all, that doesn't work. Second of all, that only works in English, all right? To say Hail Zeus in Greek, you have to say Zeus, or Zeus. That is completely different from Hail Zeus. We think that because in English we pronounce Zeus's name as Zeus. But in Greek, in the original Greek, the name of that false god is not Zeus, as we say in English. It's Zeus. Zeus, very different. So the Hail Zeus hypothesis doesn't work. It's only it deceives English speakers who don't know any other language. That's what it happens, okay? You can't call Jesus Joshua. That's your opinion, but remember, the Jews, the Jewish people, long before our Messiah was born, were already calling Joshua Jesus. Okay? So you can have your opinion, but historically, Jewish people had no problems using the name Jesus for Joshua, not our Messiah, Joshua. Okay? So it's a very English thing to say you can't call Jesus Joshua. It's a very English thing because in English, we always pronounce our names the same way. Right? But remember, in other cultures and in other languages, people's names change across the languages. And this is something you will only know if you have learned a second language growing up. Okay? But if you are English-centric, if you only know English and your frame of reference is solely English, then you will struggle to understand that things are different outside of the USA. Okay?
Ron actually knows Hebrew, and I agree with you 100%. By the way, before you gave that answer, I just want to show this because Ron's a cool guy, but he says, I totally respect you. And then he mentioned this. Yeah,
it is influence from Aramaic for sure. Yes, I won't say change. I would say influence from Aramaic. Yes. So later Hebrew. Let's go back to to our stages. All right, so as you go down the stages, let's turn on. As you go down the stages, there is more and more influence from Aramaic. And the reason is because Aram, or Syria, was a growing superpower. So Israelites, if you want to give your Israelite child an edge in life, you would teach him Aramaic in addition to Hebrew. And so very naturally, Israelites will start incorporating elements of Aramaic even as they are speaking Hebrew. And that's why Yeshua would say Abba, right? He would use the word Abba because of the influence of Aramaic, right? But in the earliest times, okay, you will not find you will not find that. Joshua to Jesus, but not Jesus to Joshua. Yeah, not Jesus to Joshua. You won't call Jesus Joshua. I understand that. Yes, we don't know whether our Messiah was ever called Yehoshua. It's true. We don't know that. So it's safest, the safest, and I think most reasonable assumption is that our Messiah was called Yeshua all his life. Right? And never Yehoshua, even though they are different forms of the same name. But by that time, people were more used to saying Yeshua compared to Yehoshua. Would you say that there is one version of Yeshua that carries more root word meaning? No, I would not say that. Both Yehoshua and Yeshua, to me, carries the same root word meaning of salvation, right? It doesn't really matter how it is spelled. A fluent speaker of biblical Hebrew living during those times would not have thought that Yeshua carries the root meaning more than Yehoshua or vice versa. It would not be how they thought. We think like that today because our frame of reference is English, you know. But back then, Yehoshua and Yeshua were equally the same name, just different forms. They would not have thought that they were different. Yeah.
Right. I agree 100%. And she makes a good point because I've heard people say that it's not Yeshua because the theophoric element has been taken out.
You'll have to take that up with Nehemiah, right? Don't fight me. Fight scripture. Fight scripture. Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 17. Yeshua. Don't fight me. Fight scripture. Fight Jehovah. He's the one that had it written as Yeshua in Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 17.
I'm with you.
So they're calling it right there. Yeah.
All right, Professor Asher, it's 9:58 where I am. I know in Singapore it's quite a different time. So I think that's it for the questions. Is there any last questions before we log off? We got 2 minutes, 120 seconds. If you got any questions, ask them now. I see we got 14 people watching. It's a little bit bigger audience than usual. So Professor Asher, you want to go ahead and lock in the next session that you're going to do?
Yes. So in 2 weeks' time, we'll have lesson number 5 on definiteness. Then 2 weeks later, we'll have another open live stream like that for open questions and any ramblings, I guess. So our lesson, I think, is on, I don't have it here. You'll have to check the Facebook for that. Tell you what, why not we take this offline?
Okay.
It will be on our Facebook.
Yeah, it'll be on Facebook. Okay, this last one.
What do we do with hapaxis? You can't read Ugaritic, but many scholars can and have. So just pull out the lexicon. So the standard lexicon today is Halot, or the Hebrew Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament. It's about $300, I think. Okay, but yes, that's how you do it. All right.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe. If you don't follow us on Facebook, I forgot the Facebook page name. I think it's Misinformation, right?
Misinformation, yeah.
Right. Well, you found the YouTube channel somehow, so just follow us on Facebook to stay updated with upcoming lessons. Professor Asher, I thank you, and everybody that contributed asking questions. I thank y'all too. Torare ba lehitro.